All right, so let me start by saying that in the ancient world, a mathematician could also have been an architect. Over time, with developments within several fields, a formal distinction became increasingly clear, and the role of the architect diverged from the role of the mathematician. And we start to see design and art that can actually have mathematical roots. Okay, so one can see this dynamic between math and architecture and design in history. Okay, so we've got the pyramids in Egypt. The pyramids of Giza contain many references to the golden ratio, but one such example is in the slope of the pyramid walls, which rise from the earth at 51 degrees and 50 seconds. The golden ratio is defined as the ratio between two quantities such that the sum between them relates to the larger number, as the larger number relates to the smaller number. The limit of the golden ratio is if you take as a and b go to infinity of a plus b divided by a, that's actually the same as taking the limit of the Fibonacci sequence divided by the previous term. And when you take the limit, you get 1 plus the square root of 5 divided by 2. Now, the pyramid's reference to the golden ratio in its slope is either a natural coincidence or an artistic choice by the mathematically oriented architects of ancient Egypt. The consensus is that the Egyptians intentionally built the pyramids with the golden ratio in mind. Regardless, it's certainly not a question of their mathematical capability to be able to incorporate an approximation for the golden ratio into the pyramids. But regardless, it's even more of a testament to their collective intelligence that they were able to create such a grand monument which reflected mathematical ideas without the force and security of rigorous mathematical tools. While the pyramids of Giza illustrate ancient Egyptian understanding of mathematical ideas in both its design and in the logistics required for construction, the architects of the Middle Ages did something unprecedented. They applied tessellation design to the interior tilings of mosques, something neither the mathematical nor the design world had seen before. As shown in the top repeating block of black and white figures, a tessellation is a repeating geometric shape where they line up next to each other with little to no wasted space between the constructions. The photos below are from the Timurid Shrine in Afghanistan from the 1420s, which I'll talk about in a second. But let me first talk about the origin of tessellations. Tessellations were a new idea and originally conceived in Islamic cultures in the 12th century as ghirid tiles, or patterns created by drafting a zigzag line called strapwork onto which a polygon can be constructed and doubled with compass and straightedge. By incorporating rotational symmetry, the visual appeal could be enhanced, and the set of modular distances that could be spanned perfectly by a pattern could be expanded to accommodate the dimensions of a particular space. Not until the 1800s did mathematicians rigorously prove that polygons of 2, 3, 4, and 6-fold rotational symmetry are possible to tessellate with a compass and straightedge, while the 5 and 10-fold rotational symmetries are physically impossible to tessellate. This dichotomy between the figures, which could or could not be tessellated, was exploited by the designers to indicate a hierarchy within the design to bring prominence to unit cells of interest, even without a formal proof to verify their intuition. An architectural drawing of the Timurid Shrine is on the top left here, just to give you a sense of what this landmark is architecturally. The tessellations are part of the interior and exterior design, though, as you can see in the bottom right. So in the bottom left, you can see We start with a 10-3 star to create other figures such as the one on over here with tenfold symmetry. In part A, first construct a circle and divide it into 10 sectors. With a compass and straight edge, choose one sector and connect it to every third sector. So essentially, you start at a given point and skip 2 and connect it to the third one and keep doing that. And if you go around, you'll get this 10-pointed figure, which is continuous. Now, the resulting figure, is a 10-pointed figure. And then in parts B through D, the 10-3 star is manipulated with compass and straight edge to create one of the numerous patterns showed at the Timurid Shrine, photographed on the right. The unprecedented patterned design that tessellation design activated in the Middle Ages effectively gave a strong sense of sacredness to the interiors of mosques. Using compass and straight edge, the architects of the day designed tiling sequences that not only imparted a sense of dignity, but beyond any previously conceivable degree to the spaces in the mosques, but also were able to span physical space in aesthetic and intuitive ways, while at the same time optimizing the ease of installation for the artisans who would have to put the designs together with real materials. Leveraging the potential of a shape could be repeated doubly without repeatedly doubled without gaps or overlap, regardless of their mathematical legitimacy for artistic, functional, and cultural effect, is what an architect or interior designer would most likely do upon discovering tessellations, whereas dividing them into an analytical study of their properties, characteristics, and formal distinctions of their shapes is what the mathematician would most likely do upon discovering tessellations. The interplay between the mathematics in the medieval Islamic tessellations inspired the mathematical study of tessellations. The process of repeatedly doubling polygons with no overlap is an innovation in the field of architecture and design, illustrating the independent emergence of what was to become a source of mathematical study, and to open up an entirely new path of mathematics, instead of the other way around. While the tessellations of the Middle Ages displayed a geometrical feat, another example in history of mathematics which combines mathematical ideas with art is in the work of the 20th century artist M.C. Escher, who lived from 1898 to 1972. He was previously an architecture student before pursuing graphic art. His works explore perspectival distortion, as shown in the top left, tessellations, which you can see in this one with the reptiles, and in the bottom left with the fish transforming into the geese, and on the right over here with these different heads and faces with hair and hats morphing into each other. The bottom right here shows the transformation of a plain snowflake-like fractal into moths or butterflies. Over here, we see how Escher's work sometimes takes on an architectural flavor and explores spatial logical inconsistency with While tessellations have a clear mathematical link, upon a closer look, it's clear that the other motifs like self-reference, paradox, and spatial logical consistency have mathematical roots as well. The book Gödel, Escher, Bach by Douglas Hofstadter explores the mathematical relationships in Escher's work, focusing mostly on self-reference, logic, and paradoxes. The tessellation of reptiles shows reptiles that, quote, push out of two-dimensional space, taking on life form. After crawling back into the loop outside of the tessellation, the reptiles, quote, pop back into the two-dimensional tessellation. He relates this process of pushing and popping in and out of the dimensions of in and out of the dimensions to various levels of proofs or computer programming, where variables can take on different meanings to carry out recursive processes and loops, which might not mean anything outside of the loop that created it. On the left, the drawing of this waterfall depicts a recursive loop, or you could interpret it mathematically by saying it's almost like a recursive loop. The flow of the waterfall is being directed by architectural structures which seem to defy the logic of space, and touches on ideas such as recursive loops similar to a program which could write its own source code. On the right, the pair of hands drawing themselves off of the paper illustrates the paradox of self-reference stunningly and with simplicity. The paradox of self-referential systems is fundamental to the 20th century mathematician Gödel's incompleteness theorems, which state that mathematics must either be inconsistent with itself or incomplete, meaning that the set of rules which follow from the most basic axioms of logic in mathematics must either imply the existence of a contradiction within the system of mathematics, or imply that the system of mathematics can never prove everything there is to be proved about mathematics. Without getting into the details, one can at least observe the apparent self-referential contradiction with the hands drawing each other and understand a connection to the idea that nothing can be both true and not true at the same time. On the one hand, if the hands could truly draw each other off the page into a three-dimensional universe, wouldn't that mean that one of them had to have popped off the page to be able to draw the other off the page? If so, then how did the one hand become popped off the page? The only way for that to happen is if the other hand had been popped off the page too. On the other hand, if that is the case, then both hands must have started off the page to begin with, which creates an infinite loop of circular reasoning, which, just like Gödel's incompleteness theorem points out about mathematics, cannot be at the same time prove its logical consistency to exist in completeness without also conjuring up a contradiction. It's not hard to see that M.C. Escher was an incredible artist, an incredible artist whose works are both aesthetically pleasing and often tease the mind with topics related to mathematics like perspective shifts, depictions of logical and spatial fallacies, paradoxical self-reference, tessellations, and dynamic foreground and background progressions. Through history, though, even before mathematics was established as a field of study with formal proofs, the relationship between mathematics and architecture, design, and art is like the relationship between childhood friends as they grow up. Starting as inseparable childhood friends, they are now like friends who have grown up into who they are and have gone their separate ways in order to lean into their gifts. Nevertheless, they have deep roots and an age-old bond, sometimes manifested in their work, and who often call upon each other to work together, teach each other, be inspired by each other, or ask for help. Here's my works cited if you're interested. You probably don't care that much, but the book Gödel, Escher, Bach is a pretty good one. Alright, thanks for listening, guys, and have a good day. Feel free to ask questions in the Zoom meeting. I'll see you there. Take care. Bye-bye.